Hey everybody, welcome to a recognized webinar on frontline energy, not burnout. How we're going to talk about how we can use employee recognition, positive reinforcement along in your plants, in your warehouses, in your logistics to drive engagement, retain your top employees, and just make your workplace a better place, right? Leadership wants this, your employees want this, your leadership wants higher performance, right? Your staff want to feel recognized, feel that things are safe, right? And that these things are being promoted. So we're going to talk about how to systematize recognition within your organization and create have it be more of an operational component more than anything, and how to utilize managers to do that. With that being said, love to hear in the chat where you're calling in from before we get started. Put in where you're calling in from. If you have a peer-to-peer recognition program now, where people can recognize each other in the company, put a one in the chat. Let's see where you're at. If you have any kind of recognition, that could be an anniversary program, that could be a nomination program for the employee of the year, put a two in the chat. I think around 70-75% of companies have an anniversary program. About half have that nomination program for the employee of the year, and then less so on the recognition. So it's a strategic asset, the recognition program, because your competitors aren't doing it probably, right? So if you do it, you can be driving those positive moments, showing your company what success looks like. Awesome. We're seeing people coming in from California, Texas, Canada, Phoenix. Awesome. Hey, everybody, thanks for joining. And if you're just joining now, if you have a recognition program, a peer-to-peer recognition, put a one in the chat. Any other head of recognition program, put a two. Love to see where you're at. But yeah, let's go ahead and go through. We have a lot to cover. It's going to take about 45 minutes or so, but I try to move swiftly through it, to keep engagement up and for you to take something away from this. So who am I? I am Alex Grandy. I am the CEO and co-founder of Recognize. It's an employee recognition and reward software. So I've been passionate about gamification psychology for, I guess more than basically half my life at this point. From university onward, I've always been a technologist, a web developer, tinkerer, and very passionate about motivation. Before I was a technologist, before I started Recognize, I was in construction. So I've done big jobs like remodels of corporate offices, to building barns, houses. So in my experience, I feel like I have a good sense of what it's like to be on the front line, to be deskless, to be wearing shoes with steel reinforced, right? In comparison to being at a desk working in a computer, being in an office, being in large offices, being in startups as well. So I've been able to work in many different types of environments. So a few things that I've learned over the years, and we're going to go over each one. The floor reality. So let's level set on where we're at. The rhythm. So how to create recognition culture without having to add a lot into the workflow for your managers, for your supervisors. The fairness framework on how we can alleviate favoritism. I want to talk about the triple threat. So how to really link recognition to what the leadership is looking for. And then some things that the managers can take away, right? So this presentation can be emailed to you afterwards as a PowerPoint. You can remove the slide about me and just present this to your leadership as a concept, right? If you're not already doing a positive reinforcement program, showing your staff what success looks like. That's the main point here. And then we're going to close and see if anyone has any questions. So let's dive into it. I just want to highlight, I mentioned on the point about performance. If you talk to leaders, oftentimes they'll tell you their number one concern is performance, right? Always. It's just a standard thing to always be concerned about in the C-suite. And I just read a stat this morning that only 48% of manufacturing leaders believe their frontline workers are engaged. So, whereas comparison to them believing 70% of their back office is engaged. And I don't know, that might be just their perception because they're not down on the floor, or maybe that's through surveys, but that's the sense that they have, right? So we want manufacturing leaders to feel that everybody across the board is 70% engaged. Have that sense of unity inside the company between the back office and the front office. Something that we hear a lot at Recognize, where we help people, organizations from hospitals to logistics to airlines to manufacturers of RVs, how they can marry that connection between the back office and the factory floor, the deskless employees. So let's go into it. So let's level set for a moment. So the reason why corporate culture fails in manufacturing or fails at factory floor is that it's just a different environment, right? If it's being dictated from the boardroom, it's not going to apply to the floor room. So that's why we're looking at how to explain this to leadership, to help bring certain leaders out that may not be leaders today, that can help shape the culture of the organization as a whole, right? To represent everyone inside the organization, not just the people making the decisions in the back office who sit at a desk and work on a computer all day. I think one of the most telling points here that you can, if someone is skeptical of that, you highlight that managers in a back office, right, they have time to go on those 30-minute coffee breaks every week, possibly with their direct reports in a one-on-one, right? And honestly, we don't even have visibility in what people are even saying in one-on-ones too. So it's something that's on top of my mind, right in the chat. If you're thinking about one-on-ones, if you're thinking about what people are saying in one-on-ones, if it's being cohesive across the culture, that's something that I'm interested in. But the major difference here is the back office can do one-on-ones 30 minutes every day with every week with every employee, whereas a supervisor on a floor can often have 20 or 40 employees, right? The benefit, obviously, is you may have more direct reports, but at least you can see what they're doing, right? Whereas people on a computer, I could be behind someone, I could be in front of someone on a computer and not be able to see their screen, and they could be on Instagram or they could be working on a spreadsheet. Like, I don't know, right? Whereas on the floor is more visible. That is true. And so it's just a different beast, right? The floor versus the back office. So, and I think the one-on-ones is a telling point of the difference there. That's why everybody needs to be involved, in that. And oftentimes the corporate has that command and control management style. And this reduces ownership, this reduces engagement amongst frontline employees. Then things that are hidden amongst different parts of the organization. And then they're not bubbling up because there's no ownership over those. So that's why I feel like treating culture not as an HR problem, but as an operations problem that should go across the entire organization. Moving on into the next topic here. So rhythm, right? We want to have a recognition rhythm. Manufacturing often has a culture gap between the executives, the plant managers, the supervisors, the hourly workers, right? So, if leaders aren't spending the time on the floor understanding the realities, then their policies aren't going to work. So what we can do is a couple of things around recognition that can start driving that today, and that's what we call recognition rhythms. And it's designed to slot directly into the workflows that you already are doing, creating zero additional overhead. And then the supervisors and the team leads can be the ones running that recognition program. It can be done daily in just 30 seconds. And within 1 month, you'll have that recognition culture. And that data that you're collecting, and we'll talk more about how to collect that data, can then be utilized in more meaningful results than just a daily reinforcement, right? So the point here is we're reinforcing what success looks like, what is great behavior, is then modeled more. And I'll have a diagram to explain that later. But when a win is visible on the entire floor, it amplifies impact without adding any additional work to the manager's workflow, which is really the goal here. Another problem we see is favoritism, and oftentimes favoritism is solved simply by having more recognitions. Just be frank about that. If you have a program like you only have a nomination program, which is that quarterly award or yearly award, your program possibly could be backfiring because it could be the same people every year, or the person who just got hired, or someone who just did something recently. If you do something amazing in January, it may not be recognized at all because the reward ceremony doesn't happen until December. So I just simply promote more of a peer-to-peer recognition program You want to see 80% of your organization recognized at least once a month. Strive for that daily 30-second recognition by the supervisors, by the managers. But if you're not able to do that at least once a month, and have tools ideally that can reinforce that, like using a third party like Recognize, just to plug in our tool. Recognize reinforces that recognition behavior. Like right now, I'm looking at my phone. I have a notification to recognize one of my direct reports. So it makes it that easy to do. But I thought we could do a poll here. Really, if you want to pull up the poll. So yeah, number one challenge in building a strong culture. Really curious to hear what you think. Yeah, so just to highlight again on favoritism, the perception of favoritism, it's going to kill the engagement. It can be more damaging than not doing any recognition at all. But it arises when workers are being praised for their personal relationships rather than performance. And we're going to talk about how to make that easier for everybody involved, to set basically rules around the recognition. All right, let's see what the survey said. Okay, 45% communication breakdown between teams. That's really interesting. Yeah, we definitely see that as well in remote teams. Any kind of environment, it can be very interesting. I remember in kind of a funny story, but in grade school, we did a leadership exercise, no, middle school, where there was three people in a row, right? So me and two other people. And then there was instructions on what to pass back through the communication channel. And it was to illustrate how quickly communication can break down. When you have a lot of instructions and you have to pass it down through memory, certain things may be forgotten, and then you lose the game. So I thought that was really telling. Even then, we see communication breakdown, on Microsoft Teams or Slack. You're not in the same office, you're not in the same environment. You lose that water cooler time, where people will say, "Hey, I just saw this something or other," right? And somebody can overhear that and be like, "Oh, wow, about that," right? Whereas you have to be very explicit on a remote environment. But even I thought it was interesting here in the kind of frontline environment, communication can break down between teams. If anyone has any specific stories about how communication is broken down between your teams, please share in the chat. We love to talk about it towards the end of the webinar. But I also think it's telling that 36% said low engagement morale, and I'd love to hear anything on that as well. So I thought that was really interesting. That the lack of recognition, only 5%, are you feeling that is an issue? So that's great. That tells me that people are feeling that their work is engaging. Oftentimes if we are really engaged in our work, we don't need recognition as much. Maybe once a month rather than on a weekly basis. I know certain types of organizations like nurses, people you're working with, people in hospice, these are difficult roles, and it can affect your mental health. So that continuous reinforcement is important. But if your organizations are feeling that the work is engaging, that's great. In that way, then you do need less recognition. That doesn't mean we can't put a system around the company values and promoting certain behaviors to drive higher engagement and higher performance. So the next topic here is on the idea of the fairness framework. So, as I touched on, if there's favoritism, it can be worse than not having anything at all, right? So, so we want to ensure that the recognition is not political, as well as not just based off of personal relationships. So moving away from subjective praise to objective metric-based triggers. Right. So this removes the manager's discretion from the equation and making it more focused on what is actually being accomplished from a performance. And then you're promoting these behaviors publicly and visibly, and you're going to just create more of that. It's going to become a flywheel. Right. So examples could be 100 days of zero incidences, or zero rework of a certain run. Driving safety is a really popular one. You can also recognize things like wellness initiatives. So these are things outside of specifically just their work. but just being healthy in general, not smoking, exercising, um, community service is another one. If you think about Tom's shoes, they make shoes, but they do the buy one give one model, right? They're creating meaning out of simply shoes, by giving away a pair of shoes if someone needs it. So that kind of effort, where organizations may be manufacturing sprockets, but they are doing there's heavily involved in the community from a community support perspective. So they're doing much more than just simply creating a product. I think also what we're going to talk more about is digitizing recognition, so that you ensure that everyone is involved. Even a 2 a.m. quality achievement is then seen by the whole organization through those screens or through the mobile app of your recognition program, right? So no matter when you clock in, you are seeing the great work being done, and it's being done at a higher velocity. And we'll talk about how to increase that velocity of recognitions later on. But I want to talk about this idea that I have of a quiet hero. So, we hear a lot about quiet quitting, especially post-COVID was a hot topic. But what about the quiet hero, right? And these are the people that you want to be discovering through data, through that peer-to-peer recognition program. Another benefit to a peer-to-peer recognition program, again, isn't just saying, good job, attaboy, but it's actually collecting that data and discovering those diamonds in the rough to be able to be reported on at any time. That could be a quarterly review or 6 month or end of year. These things will bubble up, right? And then this also will combat kind of one of the default behaviors that I've seen when I did construction and I hear about in manufacturing and other types of frontline work, is that we only talk to the workers when something is going wrong, right? An injury, a defect, a missed target. These are the things that are talked about because we have to talk about, right? Instead, we want to flip the script and talk about things that are positive, even if it wasn't as clear as just simply something been accomplished. So I'll give a few examples here. So we'll jump into it. Rewarding near miss reporting. So if you're not already recognizing these things, this is something that you can set up through a recognition program, and we'll talk about how to create one either through something like Recognize or through a manual or automated process. But basically, this is a diagram that represents the proactive safety cycle of being able to identify a hazard, it's reported, and then it's prevented. So, how can you make it so that, yes, it's great to recognize that 100-day zero safety incidences, but what about preventing it? Right. So getting ahead of it can be something that you can promote through a recognition program to discover those quiet heroes. Another idea is rewarding the process, right? So oftentimes it can be hard to create those habits, right? So this is rewarding precision and proactive behaviors. This emphasizes that recognition and the recognition of processes is critical. It is often overlooked. And so, again, you can be incentivizing these things through a recognition program. And again, this will communicate to managers, to leadership, why recognition is not a nice to have, but a need to have. And another concept to recognize or discover through a quiet hero program is specific behaviors. So praising concrete actions over general sentiment, encouraging consistent performance through positive reinforcement, and then lastly, boosting output, right? Reducing waste, improving safety compliance, all through recognizing those specific behaviors. So, a great way to get people involved in a recognition program is by reaching out to leadership and talking to them. Hey, what keeps you up at night? How can I help you achieve those things? What are the behaviors you want to see more of? What do you want to see? What behaviors you want to see less of? Let's use a positive reinforcement program through recognition and rewards to drive that, right? And it could be like I said, a strategy over the competition. All right. Just a few specific examples of things you can be looking for, recognizing as a manager or as a operations or even HR, things like proactive equipment reporting, or being able to people who are actually suggesting process improvements, who are actually submitting process improvements, and then what about keeping your space clean? So these are just like basic concepts that could be recognized, and I'm sure that if you can think of some, please share in the chat. I'd love to hear any ideas anyone has on what they would recognize specifically. And yes, we will be sending the presentation. Glad that you love it. Thanks for hearing from that. But yeah, we'll send it over as a PowerPoint. I think we can send it as a PowerPoint. They get kind of large as PowerPoints, but we would love to be able to send it over so you can remove slides or edit the content. So yeah, awesome. I think we're about halfway through or so here, maybe a little bit more. But so talking about recognition and how to achieve a recognition program. So it doesn't matter if you use a third-party solution like Recognize, or if you want to do it on your own, but you're going to want to make it mobile. You want to make it digital, right? And ideally, the recognitions can be sent instantly. HR doesn't want to be the bottleneck. HR doesn't want to have to be approving spreadsheets of recognitions. I hear that a lot. People call and say, "Hey, why did you come to Recognize?" Well, we already have a recognition program, but it's manual, and I have to edit everything, and then I have to send out the rewards myself, and it's a real pain. So that's great. That means that company already values recognition, right? I can't wait to be going to the Great Place to Work conference in April in Vegas. If you're going, I'd love to see you there. But to be a great place to work, you have to have a recognition program. But you don't want it to be something that bogs people down. So you want it to be mobile, instant. I know that they say the best strategy for recognition is to send recognition as soon as you see it. That's a little overkill for me. I mean, oftentimes you see something amazing and you think, oh my gosh, I want to recognize that person for that, but I am in the middle of something. I don't want to get distracted and recognize them officially for that right at this moment. So, within the week of seeing something awesome, recognize them, which is nice to put that on your calendar. We encourage that. Put that free, it's free on your calendar. It's only 5 minutes. It's on Friday. What is something awesome somebody did this week, or at least a few people? Easy to do that, to create that habit. Another thing you want to make sure that in your recognition program is that you give specific and impactful feedback. When you look at a recognition 1 year from now, you want to be able to know what that recognition was about. A screenshot, a quote, something that communicates exactly what happened. If you look back at a recognition a year later and it's, hey, great work on that project. It's like, what project? What was the great work? Not specific, right? And then ideally you have some kind of meaningful reward. If you don't have a meaningful reward, if it's not tangible things, I just talked to a very large successful software company the other day, and they said, our employees don't need any more money. Okay, that was a very frank thing to say. Nice problem to have. Your staff don't need any more money. But what other things can we do, right? Well, you can provide status in the organization. You can provide access to things. You can give power to make a decision for people who've shown to be a leader, right? So these ideas around gamification, motivation. But the easiest thing to do is provide rewards of the kind of tangible, right? So I used my points last night. I'm here in Portland right now, and I'm going to the basketball game tomorrow, the Portland Trailblazers, and I used my points from our recognition program to help reduce the cost of the tickets, right? I didn't have enough points to be able to buy the whole the tickets, the seats, but I was able to offset it or even reduce it, I think almost by half by using my points. So that's a really meaningful reward, being able to redeem, concerts or sporting events, Amazon gift cards, experiences, flights. If you are putting that into your recognition program, it's going to create a lot of engagement because people are going to be excited about earning those rewards. And it also communicates to the staff that your recognition program means something. It's not just, hey, thanks, and that's it. Like, Microsoft Teams, they have kudos, or Viva Engage, I think, has something similar where it's just, thank you, and that's it. Having a robust program, there's a threshold to engagement. And that's why a lot of those times, those kinds of free programs that we just turn on and forget about it, don't last because there's not that reinforcement through rewards, through leadership, showing and giving status to the program. So and touching again on leadership, oftentimes we need to put recognition into context, put it into the flow of how we do work together. So this is a basic diagram to show, as we touched on earlier, those kinds of safety motivations, right? To look for near misses, to create habits, follow processes, recognize specific behaviors. And then so we put that into a recognition program. And then what is the output, or what is the result? Higher quality, more productive staff. One of the ways to be more productive, I asked a HR manager recently, what keeps your leadership up at night? I asked them that question. And they said performance, specifically retaining our top performers. And there's going to be a moment when your top staff are going to get an offer down the way at another organization, and they're going to ask themselves, am I seen, am I valued in this organization? And also, of course, let's be honest, am I making enough money? So you want your staff to have that checkbox. Yes, I am valued and I'm seen in my organization. And then you will retain your top staff through that as part of the toolbox of ways is to retain those top staff. So this is a simple diagram to be able to illustrate why are we doing this and what's the result of what we're doing. And this takes this conversation out of, we're just trying to have a recognition program to make people feel good. And that can be a tough pill to swallow for leadership. They want to know why it matters to them. So, okay, let's talk a little bit about how to support managers and things that they can do to remove the friction. So if you do have TVs or kiosks, iPads, anywhere that people work, I recommend this. It's really affordable to buy TVs now. $150, you can get a flat screen TV, put it up on a wall, and then you can put content on that. And there's a lot of different tools to put content. If you're not already doing this, I highly recommend it. It's really easy to put up. There's all these kinds of tools. Even just using Fire Stick, just plug in a Fire Stick and show a web page with content. So, for instance, if I go over to, Recognize, this is, our employee recognition rewards website. Of course, we're in Microsoft Teams, we're in Slack, we're on the phone, but we do have this TV view, and we have a couple of them. We have a couple of grids let me just change it over. I have a couple of grid views, right? So that this is showcasing the recognitions, ideally on a TV. And we have hospitals that use this and factories that use this to highlight recognitions or anniversaries, birthdays. And it could be for specific parts of the organization, right? If you have thousands of employees and you're on a factory floor and it's a bunch of recognitions of people in another country, is that really meaningful? No. So you can actually specifically say what group those recognitions come from. So, have things like that if you can, or even just manually put in, a couple of great recognitions that managers have sent in. And you can do that. And I'll talk about how you can do that more manually too. Again, you want to be able to have people send recognitions from mobile. I'm going to talk about how to do that. But with Recognize, we have text message notifications. So anytime you redeem a reward and you want to get that the link to get that Starbucks gift card, or when a manager is asked to approve approval recognition, right? We have an approval process you can turn on with Recognize. It can all be done through text messaging. It can all be done through the mobile phone and through a phone number, not necessarily an email. That's one of the problems and barriers to a lot of third-party programs is everybody needs an email or a corporate email. Recognize you don't. You just need to have a cell phone number. And that way we can connect and reach out to as many people as possible. 3 clicks away. So you either want like maybe a custom email that people can send a recognition to, or being able to use an app like Recognize. You want to be, our rule is 2 clicks, but you could possibly be 3 clicks. You would want to reduce that friction, and you want to make it so it's one less tab in people's browsers. The people sending recognitions may be more on their phone or maybe on an iPad, like the floor supervisors, people like that. But I can just, I won't get into it now, but sending a recognition is within 2 clicks. And I'd love to do a demo of Recognize. Please reach out to us afterwards if you'd like to see more of Recognize. So another thing for managers is prompts. So so Jess just linked in the chat if you want to join our live demo. I don't think I'm going to be doing that. One of our colleagues is. But if you want to meet with me, we'll have my contact at the end. But come to our live demo. Yeah, another thing is prompts. So a lot of times managers don't really know what to say. It stops them from sending a recognition because they just don't know how to get their words out, right? So just giving them a few examples, it can be very helpful. And you can put that in the description of whatever value they're recognizing. Again, with recognize, we put in the values of the organization or the behaviors they're trying to incentivize to categorize the recognitions. So the message is part of the kind of the metadata that comes with a recognition. It's very visual, it uses a badge to do that. But here's examples. I'm not gonna read them, but you can take a screenshot or we'll send it over the presentation later. But it's nice to have kind of just already set up examples to be able to use. Another thing, so I touched on this earlier, so automation, right? So with Microsoft, with Zapier, make.com, you're able to use these tools that can connect one tool to another tool through more automation. So you can have an inbox, let's say, an Outlook, right? Recognition at your company, recognize at your company, for instance. And then that can be analyzed by Copilot or AI. It can then be posted to Microsoft Teams, right? It could be logged into an Excel spreadsheet or a Google sheet, right? And then it could be utilized later on for performance reviews and be used as a way to, you can add in Claude into Excel now. You can add AI into or Copilot and say, hey, pick a random row in the spreadsheet of recognitions, and that's your random 6-month winner, right? Or we do that on a monthly basis. In Recognize, we do a random recognition automatically, but you can pipe the data into Claude or whatever, and be able to say, hey, who's the person who received the most recognitions around a certain value? What's a notable recognition? What's a random recognition? I love the random recognition because anyone who sends a recognition is now entered into a raffle, essentially, right? For just it doesn't have to be, there's no favoritism around randomness, right? We're just having fun recognizing someone randomly who sent and received recognition. So fun to do that on monthly or quarterly, 6-month, year. So again, looking into how to utilize whatever automation tool that your company is using. If you're not using an automation tool today, I would definitely take a look at that. It's a skill to have in 2026, is being able to connect an email to a spreadsheet, to Microsoft Teams, to Slack, just make things happen automatically. It's pretty incredible what you can do now. We do a lot of automation here at Recognize, everything from when you sign up for our newsletter, to we have automation with Recognize. So if a redemption happens, we can send it to a third-party system. When a recognition occurs, that can automatically be piped into a spreadsheet, right? So you want to work with tools like Recognize, like Microsoft, that connects and plays nicely with other third-party tools. I love the comment by Jillian. We do random drawings for both Recognize and for giving recognition on a monthly basis. Employees really enjoy that. Really, I love that. Thanks for reinforcing that idea. Awesome. So just going to touch on why this matters. Again, communicating to the leadership. If you don't have a full-fledged recognition peer-to-peer program, a great way to communicate why this is important. I'm happy to send over where I got these stats online. We always do sources for the stats, but you want to be able to communicate. This is not just a feel-good program with recognition, that we're going to reduce turnover of your key employees and we're going to increase productivity significantly, right? And even if you had a third of what these stats predict that they've seen in the studies, again, I'm happy to send those over. You'll have a benefit. You'll have an ROI to a recognition program. Depending on how many employees you have, a recognition program can either be run by a HR coordinator. Obviously, it's always better when you have a culture committee where you have different stakeholders in the organization come and they communicate what initiatives they have, and you create a cohesive program that's aligned, right? That's always the best. But if you have a third-party subscription like Recognize, oftentimes companies are paying, $5,000-$10,000 a year for a program that allows for hundreds of employees or even thousands of employees, depending on the program, to have access to a recognition solution, right? So if we can reduce turnover by 10%, you're going to be getting a promotion in your organization. Awesome. So it was really great to have everyone on the call. I'd love to spend the last 5-10 minutes answering any questions. We do have a poll coming up, so don't head out. We'd love to hear some feedback. Rue, if you want to pull up the poll, we'd love to hear what you thought of the presentation today. We are doing webinars about every week. They're a lot of work and they're a lot of fun, but we want to make them better and better and more engaging. So any feedback, be honest. I'm a big boy. I can take it. But any questions you have in the chat, love to hear from that. And I'd love to hear from you. Rue sent over my email address. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. I'll move on to the next slide, which is please come to our next webinar. I'm really excited about this. It's next week, the company culture builder. And this is to help companies that are remote or hybrid. I think most companies are now hybrid. So please come to that. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm pretty excited about this one. And we have a number of other ones I'm really excited about into April too, around planning as HR and planning for culture. But let's see what the poll said. Thanks, Riley. Yeah, love to hear from you, Riley. Any questions, hit me up. Oh man, great results. 8% in May. I loved it. Room for improvement. I'll consider that. That's important to me. I'm glad that nobody was snooze. 15 got fired up. That's awesome. And 77% felt like there were some solid takeaways. So that warms my heart. I'm really happy to hear that. I took a screenshot to share with my team. But yeah, I'll see you at the next webinar, everybody. And that was a lot of fun. So I hope that there was at least one takeaway. And again, we'll send over the presentation so that you can share this with your supervisors, your leadership, your managers. So thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks, everybody.